for both for Ms. Lariva, what I asked her and what I didn't ask you was what would your first 100 days look like?
Okay, great.
So if you just like to take that and just kind of go with it.
Yeah. So the first thing that I will do, and the easiest thing to do actually, is to cancel student debt. Because the president has the power of appointment over the Federal Reserve, who decides who gets the quantitative easings and who does not. So that would be number one. And liberating young people from student debt then makes a lot of other things possible, because you then have basically re-engaged a generation which is currently, hung out to dry and not able to participate in social and community life and political life. So we then basically bring in our ground troops to help push things forward. The hope is, if we get into the White House, a lot of our congressional candidates and senator candidates would also be elected on the power of the ticket.
Like a rising tide.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the Greens are a national party. We have chapters in just about every state, and we have people running for office in every state. So we would bring with a substantial number of votes into Congress, and we would also hope to see principled Democrats and Republicans not only collaborate with us, but potentially move over as well. It's the kind of bandwagon effect you see when the public really stands up for what it wants. So that too would help. But yes, there would definitely be resistance and intransigence to deal with. So presidential power of appointment in the Federal Reserve enables step one. Step two, that the president also has power over, is breaking up the big banks. And that can be done essentially by imposing minimum capital requirements proportional to the risks that the banks are taking.
It was still for the student debt.
And this is now actually just on its own terms.
Oh,
just
okay.
As a separate issue, breaking up the big banks and creating public banks at the national and local level out of these big banks. And that is critical, because then resources become available to everyday people, to state governments, to municipalities, in order to do the things they need to do, including small businesses and worker cooperatives, who then have the capital that they need. So that's number two. That happens through an agenda that's been laid out by a former Wall Street regulator named Bill Black. He wrote the book, The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own It.
Right.
Yeah. And so Bill Black has a fabulous agenda of what the president can actually do to restore law and order on Wall Street, which has no law and order.
Yeah.
It is the most, illegal and, reckless, lawless land in the country. All of the cops on the beat were basically laid off over the past decade and a half or so. The FBI agents that used to police Wall Street and the various agencies.
Regulatory.
Yes. That used to kind of keep an eye on Wall Street, because Wall Street doesn't keep an eye on itself. So that enables a whole other, universe of possibilities as money becomes more equitable. A third critical objective is to launch the Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal is a massive jobs program that solves our economic crisis and also solves our ecological crisis in one fell swoop. It creates 20 million jobs for greening our energy system, our food, our transportation, and also restoring critical infrastructure, including ecosystems. So it puts lots of people to work. It would be nationally funded and locally controlled with certain guidelines around creating sustainable communities, sustainable ecologically, economically, and socially. and we see a key role for participatory budgeting. So it's one person, one vote. It's not $1, one vote, which unfortunately is how most policy gets made in this country at all levels. So this is through a process that is firewall against big moneyed interests. So the question is, can you fund that in a Congress that may be resistant? So we would obviously be pushing hard. We would rely on the liberated millennials to just weigh in with our representatives that they need to stand up for what the people need here. The cost of the Green New Deal actually, it pays for itself based on health benefits. So we get so much healthier from eliminating the pollution. It's widely established that that's enough to pay the costs, but you need the money up front.
The externalities are just not...
Exactly.
Yeah,
They're sort of wiped clean. Part of the Green New Deal is also creating a healthy food system. So there's another area. We know that just ending pollution alone is creates a windfall just from ending pollution, asthma, cancers, heart attacks, and strokes. But in addition, sorry about that.
No problem.
David, I better give this to you to find exactly where that cell phone is. It's usually
Let me take the whole bag.
here.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And you can just shut that phone off or monitor the messages or something. Thank you. So it's well established that the end of pollution is a major health windfall. But having a healthy food system where we're subsidizing healthy food instead of poisonous industrial food that's had the nutrients taken out and had bad stuff put into it, hormones and antibiotics and stuff like that, moving to a healthy food system also has an immeasurable benefit for health. So it pays for itself. The question is, will we need funds to jumpstart it?
Sure.
And will Congress provide them? If Congress won't, then we may look to a quantitative easing, what Jeremy Corbyn has called a people's quantitative easing in order to jumpstart that.
Cool. That's a...
And
no, please go ahead.
I should mention one other, because healthcare as a human right, changing our healthcare system, does not cost us money.
Right.
We don't have to come up with any more funds. We just change how those funds are used so that they're actually used for healthcare and not for paper pushing and bureaucracy.
I think studies have found that it saves money, actually, if you just make single payer, right?
Exactly. It saves actually
for the same reason that you're talking about, the environmental.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in fact, it saves $400 billion a year from paper pushing and pharmaceutical overcharging and stuff like that. So it's a huge savings, but that savings then gets put into covering everybody. So the savings gets put into the expansion of healthcare. But it is sort of, it doesn't require new resources, and it's basically a wash on costs. So that's something that's also very easy to do administratively. You just lower the age of eligibility for
and
Medicare.
these are executive actions that you can take?
On Medicare, changing Medicare for all?
Yeah.
That's a very good question, and I'm not sure whether that is executive action or whether that's something you'd have to push through Congress. But, again, if it requires a push through Congress, remember when the internet was going to be privatized and Congress was going to pass legislation to do that, and it was like, resistance is futile, don't even bother. Well, millennials in particular and young people got on the phone, they showed up at offices, and they really began to weigh in very hard that there would be political consequences if this critical need of everyday people was going to be sabotaged by congressional action. So I think we would need a very empowered set of ground troops that's ready, prepared to challenge, prepared to run against candidates, or to have recall campaigns if they don't stand up for what the people need, instead of just taking marching orders from the lobbyists.
Cool. Excellent. I'm going to move on to my second one. That's awesome. Thank you. So this is kind of a two-parter. This is about just two things that your campaign has done in the last 2 weeks. I guess I'll start with the first one. Is you've been doing a lot of outreach, nominally to Bernie Sanders. I'm pretty sure that you're really trying to talk to his supporters. Do you fear that when Bernie Sanders endorses Hillary Clinton, that the Green Party might face some backlash kind of through that action? Do you understand what I'm saying? That once he does that, there'll be backlash to him, and that it'll kind of feed through to the Green Party?
I think there's already backlash against the Green Party.
Well,
and I'm not sure, does Bernie intensify that? Or, maybe because I have appealed to Bernie, we'll be, by association, we'll all be lumped together as, combined spoilers or something.
Sure.
I think the political establishment is really desperate, and they reach for really preposterous reasons to try to, denigrate us and to try to blame us and humiliate us. In the same way they tried to blame Bernie for Hillary's troubles at the polls.
Right.
They'll do anything to try to blame us for that, and that's already begun. And I think it takes a case of selective amnesia to believe that. You have to remember, to believe their hype, that we have to elect the lesser evil, and that that's a great thing, and we're destroying that. You have to believe that George Bush was the bad guy, but Barack Obama was the good guy. But if you actually look at Barack Obama's record, what he did when he had 2 Democratic houses of Congress, you don't see that at all. And we had, we had massive bailouts for Wall Street that the public passionately opposed and weighed in against, and the it was way more than what George Bush himself had done. He was like $700 billion in bailouts, and under Barack Obama, it's been $16 trillion if you count all the free money and the free loans. So it made Bush look like very small potatoes. Same thing on the climate. All of the above has been a Trojan horse for drill baby drill, and basically took the lid off of fossil fuel extraction and expansion in this country, which has been horrific and very harmful to the climate, far worse than anything that was done under George Bush. The continuing expansion of the wars, Barack Obama fought to extend the war in Iraq. The only reason he had to withdraw troops was because George Bush had committed to a day of withdrawal. So, on issue after issue, this is hype. And on our civil liberties, on the, the deporter-in-chief, which Barack Obama has the title for. So the lesser evil is not lesser. The lesser evil, in fact, helps fan the flames of the greater evil, and it's race to the bottom between the two of them. In many ways, Donald Trump is a product of Clinton lesser evilism. It was the Clintons, with Bill passing it and Hillary cheerleading for it, that gave us the Wall Street deregulation, leading to the Wall Street meltdown, leading to the loss of 9 million jobs, 5 million homes stolen out from under people. This is the desperation, and they passed NAFTA, and another, millions of jobs gone. This is the desperation that throughout history drives right-wing extremism when there is not a progressive alternative to meet those needs.
There we go.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to add 2 things for the recording, and also that the first one is that also in case some people might not catch this too, one of the reasons that Obama actually ended up withdrawing from Iraq was because the parliament wouldn't allow U.S. soldiers to be exempt from war crimes.
Exactly.
Which is insane.
Exactly.
And the other thing is...
And that was the deadline that Obama kept working to extend.
Yeah.
And it was George Bush's deal with Iraq that created that date of withdrawal. Exactly.
And then the Clinton birtherism literally creating Trump, which is anyway. It's just just agreeing with each other on that point. And then my third question to you is, and this is going to go into the local paper that I work for.
Oh, great!
So in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, the Housatonic River is the waterway that goes straight down from Vermont to Connecticut. And GE, when they had their plant in Pittsfield, dumped PCBs all over, all through. So now they're under EPA order to dredge. And what they want to do is they want to drop the PCB and soil that you want to dredge the soil and then just drop it right next to the river.
Okay.
I'm not even talking like a little bit offside. I'm talking
Yes.
literally like
Yes.
feet away from
Yes.
the river.
Oh, how horrible.
GE is moving back to Massachusetts, to eastern Massachusetts, where a lot of the power is in Mass. And then just to finally like frame this a little bit more, the Massachusetts Article 97 of the Constitution, as I'm sure that you know, guarantees people the right to a clean environment. Because of that article, there is a bit of a pushback against FERC putting a pipeline in. If Mass wins that, it's possible that the Massachusetts legislature can try and override the EPA's order that GE doesn't just dump the PCBs, that they move them away. So basically, so all of that like legislative and like
So
kind of stuff,
just clarify that for me. So EPA's order is to dump the PCBs close by.
No.
So
EPA says no way. You got to take these things out of here.
I see, but the Massachusetts legislature
And
may override
what
that.
GE is doing, GE is saying no. We want to dump these right here. And what my fear is that because they are moving in Eastern Mass, all the power is there.
Yes, the legislature.
That they can try to override it, especially if this Article 97 thing goes through. Sorry, it's like a really kind of complicated explanation of what's going on. But as president, the EPA has been defunded and depowered so much. What kind of an EPA could we expect from you? And if you have any kind of comment on just that general thing that's going on.
Great, terrific. And I think that is just such a powerful symbol of the corrupt politics that we have.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the Massachusetts legislature could be overriding EPA's order in order to put the people of Massachusetts and our waterways at risk.
Right. They haven't said that they will. I'm just saying that it's a
Okay.
concern.
Well,
Sorry,
you are right. It is a concern.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right to be looking ahead to that, and it's likely to be a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it speaks volumes about our political system that we have to worry about being betrayed and sabotaged and injured by our own elected officials who have such a track record of standing up for the big, powerful interests. And, at a time when people are being poisoned all over the place, and in this, what is it, the Hoosick?
Hudson.
Well, it's
the
Hudson.
Hoosick Falls.
Hoosick Falls, yes. Where people are being poisoned by the PFOA.
Yeah, which is like half an hour away from here, I think.
Yes,
very
it's close by.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you've got Flint, Michigan, and many other cities around the country that are discovering they're being poisoned by lead. And, this is just a classic case of profit over people that industry has been allowed to dump its stuff wherever it wants, whatever the consequences are for our water systems and for our health. And this is magnified many times over because these aren't the only chemicals we're exposed to.
Right.
We happen to be exposed to about 100,000 chemicals, and almost none of them have really been adequately tested for their health impacts. Yet we have a regulatory system that says, go ahead, expose people.
Right.
And then we'll find out what's going on afterwards. And proof, we consider many of these substances too dangerous to test on people, but they're not too dangerous to expose people to.
Right.
So the test then becomes the body count after people are exposed, proving it's harmful based on diseases that have already occurred and lives already lost. This is an absolutely outrageous way to be deciding our regulatory system. So we need a system that is not owned by industry. We need to put a halt to the revolving door. If you are a lobbyist or a CEO or a representative of industry, you do not work in high office in our regulatory system. So we would put an end to the revolving door to start with, and that goes not only for the EPA but also for the Food and Drug Administration, whose rulings are very controversial and people don't trust them on GMOs, for example, because Monsanto is one of the leading regulators. They're lobbyists. One of them in particular, Michael Taylor. Yeah. So this should not be the model for how our regulatory system works. In addition, we need to hold EPA to the highest standard of actually protecting human health and the environment. And if that standard is upheld, then we will have, and it is properly funded, then we will have, a much healthier society, much healthier people, and water systems that we badly need, you know, in order to run the engines. You know, it was ironic in Flint.
I'm going to have to wrap this
Oh,
up.
okay. All right, great.
Sure.
I'll just
Sure.
finish. In Flint, the factories were protected before the people were because the water was so corrosive it was ruining the factories.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, who is this system protecting here? You know, the system needs to protect us, and that's not only the EPA, which tries to do the right thing but has very little funds to do it with, and you know has made a valiant stand in many places, including here in New York State, as well as you know our state departments of environmental protection. They need to be better funded, and their revolving door also needs to be closed. It's not rocket science how to do this. We just need to stand up with the courage of our convictions and elect our political leaders who are really working for us, not working for the billionaires that are throwing us under the bus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you so much. Sorry that went on a little bit longer.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say too much.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Really
thank
pleasure
you.
to meet you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your work.
Sure.
And thank you for your very principled